Our understanding is that they were out on a training mission today.
Boy, am I in trouble. I know you're here to see the Cessna 208 Caravan crash from Burley, Idaho. Dan Greider, probable cause. It's May 6th. It's Friday evening, May 6th. I'm supposed to have that video up right now for you to watch. It's not ready. And all I can tell you is it's not ready. A whole bunch of late breaking things have occurred as I've been messing with that and adding. And I have one shot. It's going to be a one and done to tell that story accurately and include all the information that I need to so that you can come to your own conclusion on that. It's not ready, and that's all I can tell you is it's not ready. I failed in every way. It has taken an inordinate amount of time to get to the point where it is right now. When I do finally get it released, you're going to like it and you're going to understand, and all I can do is apologize and tell you I'm doing the best I can. In place of that, I'm going to drop in this real quick video that I can throw together real fast. This helicopter thing has totally, I don't like this whole helicopter thing, so I'm going to tell you the whole story on the helicopters. 3 helicopter crashes I'm going to talk about. In each case, these guys chopped their own tail off in flight. So I'm not a helicopter guy, but I'm going to tell you kind of what I think is going on here and what is causing that and what's going to cause more of that in the future. So before I get to that, I want to tell you that my YouTube channel, my tiny little itty bitty flimsy YouTube channel, just crossed 80,000 subscribers. I'm not really a fan of that. I'm really more into minutes watched, which I've been doing great minutes watched. But anyway, thank you at whatever level that you want to support subscribers. Hurts my algorithm, but it's okay. You can subscribe if you like to, and not subscribe would be my preference here. But anyway, I've had a lot of complaints about advertising, and I want to show you this screen right here. My ad revenue is 0. It's always been 0. I don't turn on ads. I know YouTube is placing ads on some of my videos. It's out of my control, and I apologize. I'm looking for a way to fix that or amend it, but here's the screen that shows you. This is my content creator homepage that shows me all my stats. I'm not fabricating this. There's no ad revenue. I do not have ads turned on, and I will not turn on ads. I won't do sponsorships. I won't do Patreon. I won't do GoFundMe. I won't do any of that kind of stuff. You can't pay me as an expert witness or a consultant. I don't want to get involved in any of that kind of stuff. We'll talk a little bit more at the very end about how you could support me with $1 if you really like this particular video. Let's get on to the task at hand here. Here's a picture. Here's a helicopter laying by the side of the road. Notice it's got no tail on it. And I'm not a helicopter guy, but it seems painfully obvious that a helicopter in flight with no tail is not a good idea. Here's another picture of another helicopter in flight where the tail departed the helicopter in flight. Here it is just before it hits the ground. In each case, 2 people killed in each one of these 3 helicopter accidents we're about to talk about. Here's the tail of an aircraft. This is the tail of November 31 Victor Alpha from Virginia in 2017. The tail lands in a tree a long ways away from the wreckage. So here's the rest of the story. Let's get down to what really happened here. In 2017, March of 2017, they had this thing called Heli-Expo. They have it every year. This is a very well-attended big conference. It's really a good conference. Here's a picture of the slide for it. These 2 guys right here. These 2 guys work for the Virginia State Police, and the guy on the left is the experienced guy. The guy on the right is the new guy, new to the department, and they both attend this helicopter expo out in Dallas, where they hear this guy named Vachon. They both go to the Vachon seminar talking about the Vachon method for getting out of Vortex ring state, or what some people used to call settling with power in a helicopter. So we're going to get into that in a second. After the March conference in Dallas, these 2 guys get killed. August 12 of 2017, these 2 guys get killed in a helicopter, I believe, messing around with the information that they gained in the seminar. So before we do that, let's talk about what this concept is for you non-rotor people out there like me. Basically, the helicopter descends down into its own dirty air. So if a helicopter's got a tremendous amount of power on it and it's settling, it gets down into its own dirty air, and the blades of the helicopter, which are actually the wings, the lifting surface, as compared to a GA airplane, a fixed-wing airplane, those blades encounter burble, and they can stall, and they can get vibration, and they can get blade slap. You get the way to get out of this is to never get in it in the first place. But the process of this settling with power, it's in the ACS. You have to do it. You have to do it primary training. You have to do it on your check ride. You have to show at least the incipient stage of being able to recognize this and get out of it. Basically, the Vachon method means that you slide off to the side to get out of it. The traditional method has always been that you go forward, fly past your own dirty air and get out of it. May not be possible to fly past your own dirty air if you have a tremendous tailwind that's blowing your dirty air right with you as you go. So I'm not saying yay or nay on the Vachon method. I'm just saying that these two guys attended this thing, and it's been hailed as a new concept. I don't really think the Vachon method is a new concept, sliding off to the side instead of going ahead. But notice right after the accident, Vachon recovery technique, he produces this video, and it comes out in September, just 30 days after the Virginia fatal crash. Immediately after that, AOPA, our illustrious AOPA, they jump in here and they produce this article on how to do it and that everybody ought to go out and do it. And they say now, almost 100 years after the phenomenon was identified, there's a new technique to tame the beast. Well, it's not really a new technique. We've been flying out of VRS and all that stuff for 100 years. Any one of a number of methods will get you out of the dirty air that you're in. But basically, if you have a lot of power and you're settling down into your own dirty wash, then it's going to cause a problem. So notice in the timeline here, here it is in the National Transportation Safety Board in the month of February 14th of 2020, almost 3 years after the fact, they finally released the wreckage. And then in May of 2020, now they finally assemble a docket that we can look at. Now, keep in mind, this is like 2.5 years after the accident. Now they create a docket and they publish it for the first time so that we can all see the information. They have hoarded this information for 2.5 years and not let you see it. Now, they produced a probable cause. And here it is. The National Transportation Safety Board determines the probable cause. Now, this is November 3-1 Victor Alpha. The state police turbine helicopter in Virginia. The pilot's loss of helicopter control after entry into Vortex ring state, or VRS, which is the same thing as settling with power, leading to a high rate of descent to the ground with the right spin. Contributing to the accident was the pilot's lack of recent and recurrent training in Vortex ring state recognition and recovery. So they're saying this is what he got into, and it's because he didn't have recent training in VRS that causes the crash. Now notice this probable cause was issued July 13th of 2020. The accident occurred August 12th of 2017. It took them 35 months to tell us this simple statement. Here's the NTSB final accident report right here. And notice at the very bottom of this thing, it says the aft section of the tail boom was found about 100 to 150 feet from the main wreckage. So they took this thing apart in flight. It wasn't necessarily their lack of technique for getting out of it. It's the fact that they got this thing going so violent that the tail moved enough to hit its own tail boom. The rotor moved enough to hit its own tail boom, and it struck this, and it actually separated it from it in flight. Then Todd Gunther. Todd puts the final nail in the coffin for all helicopter operators going forward, and he produces this memorandum for record that's enclosed in the docket. And he said further review of the VSP Aviation Unit Training Manual also revealed that Vortex ring state was not listed in any of the sample lesson plans for initial or recurrent training, and the associated maneuvers were considered to be optional. Now, also, Todd Gunther references in all his material the Helicopter Flying Handbook, FAA H808321B, and it says, the handbook gives you the recipe here. It says to enter this maneuver, it tells you what to do to enter the maneuver. FAA is encouraging people to enter this maneuver, and they give you the conditions on how to do it. It also says if altitude is sufficient, which is defined by them 1,000 feet, some time can be spent in vortices to enable the pilot to develop a healthy knowledge of the maneuver. Well, I think a healthy knowledge ought to occur at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee. That's plenty of healthy knowledge. If we want to do healthy knowledge, we can take student pilots in a Cessna 150 and fly them right towards a tornado. I want you to have a healthy knowledge of what it's like to fly inside of a tornado. So let's launch you, send you towards a tornado, and see what you think about that. That'll give you a healthy knowledge of flying inside tornadoes. You know what I do for my students? I tell them if you see a tornado or weather or anything red on your iPad, you turn around and go the other way. We don't want you to get a healthy knowledge of violent thunderstorms. You avoid those things. Don't go near that. Understand that those things are very dangerous. Don't go near them. So after this, let's take a look at this. NTSB, pilot may not have been trained for condition that possibly contributed to Charlottesville helicopter crash. The newspaper articles start pouring in. Final report, lack of training likely caused helicopter crash during 2017. Report on fatal Charlottesville police helicopter crash focuses on training. And then this article says the condition known as vortex ring state can cause a helicopter to spin and roll uncontrollably, making it difficult for a pilot to maintain altitude. The condition mirrors what investigators with the National Transportation Safety Board think may have happened with the state police helicopter shortly before it crashed on August 12th, killing the 2 officers on board. Well, media went crazy on this. They picked up on NTSB, says that this may have happened. And now, what comes with an NTSB final ruling of probable cause? Lawyers. There's lawsuits, and everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon for suing everybody and figuring out what happened here. Let's go on to the next one here. The thing that I find most interesting is that after the fact, I found this CVR that was not supposed to be on the helicopter in the Virginia crash. It was actually a CVR of the flight the previous day or the previous flight. These same 2 guys were flying, but they were discussing the Vershon technique and VRS. They're talking about this. They do an extensive conversation about this stuff. And now the guy on the left here, this guy is the experienced guy. He wants to show it to the guy on the right. So after they get done monitoring this motorcade, they're up above 1,000 feet. I believe that they started to do a VRS demo just to show the guy what this thing was going to look like. And this article right here references this. An audio recording from just before the crash picked up Cullen talking to Bates, saying it's like a vortex ring state on your tail rotor. So they were definitely talking about it within 24 hours of the crash. Now, the next one occurs. Robinson, down in Texas, Robinson R44, this is November 514 Charlie Delta, kills 2. Here's a picture of the guy that was being trained. This was the trainee. This was the trainer. The girl was the CFI helicopter teaching. I believe that they were probably messing around with one of these techniques. They were also well above 1,000 feet. They also pulled their tail off in flight. Now we move to the recent one here. Bell 429 Global Ranger, November 507 Tango Juliet. It occurred April 26th of 2022. So we see, starting to see more helicopters out there trying this Vershon technique and wanting to get into it and get out of it. Some have been successful, obviously. Others have not. Probably going to be more in the future that are not, because if you're not successful, you get into this thing too violently, this blade flaps around and it can chop your tail off. And in all 3 of these helicopter accidents, they chopped their own tail off trying this thing. Isn't that crazy? So here's your pilot that was being trained in the New York helicopter crash. Here's the helicopter he was flying. And then check out this news article. Texas pilot Stuart Dietrich, 1 of 2 killed in helicopter crash. Bell helicopter employee pilot Stuart M. Dietrich, 60 of Prosper, was pronounced deceased at the scene. Mercy flight pilot James Sauer, 60 of Churchville, also died. He was a retired New York State Police civilian helicopter pilot. Now, the ironic thing in this one is that both of these were super qualified pilots. One was a very high-time turbine pilot. The other, Mr. Dietrich, from Texas, he was actually the Bell representative factory authorized demo test pilot Sky Guru guy. They're out there above 1,000 feet messing around with VRS and settling with power. They get their helicopter into this thing and it cannot be recovered because they also chopped their tail off. I'm starting to see a trend here. I don't like it. I don't like the concept. Now let's look at the Airbus bulletin. Here it is. I've modified it a little bit. Airbus now comes out with this thing. It says Vortex Ring State and Airbus helicopters recommendations for training. VRS often results in an accident. Fully developed VRS is dangerous and often fatal. I put this part in here. Avoid, prevention is no accident. That's me. Airbus helicopters has performed tests to gather data for a more complete understanding of the aerodynamics loads on the helicopter. Airbus helicopters does not consider VRS as a normal part of the flight domain of any rotorcraft. That's any rotorcraft. Dynamic loads on some components of the rotor system increase significantly in full VRS and are not completely taken into account in the component's service life. As a manufacturer, we do not recommend to place the helicopter in fully developed VRS. Now, here's the most important thing at the very end. We believe that VRS training should concentrate on clear wording, thorough theoretical description and understanding, with an emphasis on early detection of VRS in order to avoid entering this situation. Avoid entering the situation. Flight training should focus on early signs and initial action. Recognize and avoid. Now, here's the really bad thing, and I know I'm going to generate a lot of hate for this, but I have written my own recommendation for this. I'm not a helicopter guy, but I'm sending this out to the helicopter world. Dan's got a recommendation for you. I don't like it. I don't think you should be messing around with this thing, even if you're at 1,500 or 2,000 feet. I don't think you should be in fully developed. I don't think you should get a healthy dose of fully developed VRS, even with a test pilot, because this is what can happen. Is it possible to recover? I think it is. Is it possible for you to chop your tail off? I think that's pretty likely. So let me read this to you. I wrote this. Attention all rotorcraft operators. As a result of the August 12, 2017 fatal loss of the number 31 Victor Alpha, a turbine helicopter, the NTSB published its probable causes on 13 July 2020 as follows. The pilot's loss of helicopter control after entry into Vortex ring state, leading to a high rate of descent to the ground with the right spin. Contributing to the accident was the pilot's lack of recent and recurrent training in Vortex ring state recognition recovery. Since the NTSB has officially listed lack of recent and recurrent training as causal in the accident, all rotorcraft operators concerned with future legal liability have been effectively warned by the NTSB to complete and document flight training for the condition known as Vortex ring state, VRS, or settling with power, SWP. Same thing. In this accident, the tail rotor was separated from the body of the helicopter prior to final impact. Since the time of the NTS report, 2 more fatal rotorcraft accidents have occurred where the tail was also separated in flight prior to impact. November 514 Charlie Delta and November 507 Tango Juliet. In all 3 fatal accidents, it is probable that standard VRS SWP recovery efforts led to excessive main blade travel that intersected with the tail boom in flight. In both turbine losses, the pilots were very experienced. The loss of 507 Tango Juliet was under the command of Bell factory pilot giving training in the VRS SWE condition. All 3 accidents were operating above 1,000 AGL. Now, here's the recommendation that you all are going to hate. I know you're going to hate me for it, but I'm going to give you my recommendation. 1, there are 2 types of training specified by the FAA, ground and flight. Since the NTSB report of 13 July 2020 failed to define the type of training that was lacking, it is recommended that actual flights intentionally inducing VRS SWP condition, regardless of phase, be discontinued immediately. 2, all operators are encouraged to conduct and document frequent ground training in VRS SWP maneuvers for all flight crew regardless of seat position. 3, disseminate the following as soon as possible to all flight crew of rotorcraft equipment. All rotorcraft operating at or below 30 knots indicated airspeed at any altitude with any power setting. Settling at greater than 200 feet per minute is prohibited for any reason. Yeah, it's prohibited for any reason. Don't settle greater than 200. If you don't settle more than 200 feet per minute, I don't care what else is going on, you're not going to get into this and you're not going to die and you won't chop your tail off. I think it's very healthy to talk about it. Getting a very healthy dose of heavy vibration and deep state VRS does not sound like a good idea to me. This is coming from a helicopter pilot with exactly 0 ratings, 0 hours. I'm not a helicopter guy, but the same principle applies to flight training and GA fixed-wing airplanes. There are certain things that I can tell you about at the table, but we're not going out to try them, and we're not going to do them. I'm going to tell you what to avoid. There's a lot of stuff in life that you got to avoid. Education, knowing about it, is avoiding it. Prevention is no accident. This entire scenario is actually like spin training from the 70s and 80s, where we decided that everybody ought to get spin training, and all of a sudden, for several years in a row, we lost dozens of airplanes practicing spins where they killed themselves trying to get proficient at something that they couldn't get out of. Totally ridiculous. That's it for this one. Once again, I apologize for the length of this and the substitution for the Cessna 208 crash. If you'd like to support me financially, if this video is worth $1 or $2 to you, I would appreciate that. I'm trying to gain some funds to continue justifying producing these kinds of videos. And you can look at my dog page here, airborneanimalrescue.org, and check it out. There's a donate button on there. I'm not asking for a lot. If you can help me, that'd be totally cool. If you can't, that's totally cool too. Just watch the video and learn from it. I appreciate that. I got to get out of here. I got to get this thing up and on the air for my tiny little itty-bitty fledgling YouTube channel, Dan Grider. Probable cause.